Okay. Yeah, can confirm you can hear me now.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so sorry about that. Okay, so like I said, my name is KodeCamp, and we'll be talking about geofencing today. So let's just get right into it. So yeah, so geofencing is actually an API that allows you to define perimeters, and these perimeters are called geofences. Okay, and they surround areas of interest. Okay, so now your application gets a notification when the device crosses a geofence, that is a particular perimeter, that probably surrounds a particular place, which, like as we call here, an area of interest. So whenever your app actually crosses that geofence, that perimeter, okay, that has been defined, your app gets a notification. And this actually allows you to provide relevant experience when your users are actually inside a fenced area. Now, an example could be an airline application. Okay, it can define a geofence around an airport when a flight reservation is near boarding time. So when the device crosses that geofence, the app can send a notification that takes users to an activity that allows them to get their boarding pass. Okay, so that's basically what the whole concept of geofencing is. Okay, now this geofencing API, it also uses device sensors to accurately detect the location of the device in a battery efficient way. So the device can be in one of three states. Okay, one of three states or transition types that is related to the geofence. So we'll talk about the transition types now. Now the transition types are the enter, which indicates that the device has entered the geofence or geofences. You can see that on the diagram here. We have the dwell, and this indicates that the device has entered and is dwelling inside the geofence for a given period of time. And then, of course, we have the last one, which is the exit, and that indicates that the device has exited the geofence. So these are the various transition types. Okay. Now, geofencing actually has many applications. Okay, and you can use it for reminder applications, where you can get a reminder when you close in on a destination. Probably you're close to your house, okay, or you're close to the market, or you're close to your workplace. Okay, you could get a reminder to pick up a prescription when you get close to a pharmacy. So if you're someone who usually forgets to buy your meds when it's when it's finished or something, so whenever you're close to that particular pharmacy where you get your meds, you get a reminder that, hey, you need to pick up your prescription, or you need to buy, or you need to refill. Okay, you can actually use it for child location services, where a parent can be notified if a child leaves an area that has been designated by a geofence. So of course, as a parent, you could actually set up a geofence around maybe a school where your child actually schools. Okay, now if the child leaves that place, you get notified that, look, your child has actually left that particular perimeter, that's geofence. Okay, of course, attendance recording, where an employer can know when their employee arrives by the time they enter. So by the time they enter the office, the employer can actually get a notification, okay, that so person has actually, is around the office, or has just actually stepped into that particular perimeter that has been defined. And of course, if you're building a treasure hunt application that uses geofence to mark the place where treasure is actually hidden, and then when you enter that perimeter, you'll be notified that you have won. So that's kind of what we're going to be doing today also. Okay, so this is just to give you like a rundown of what geofencing is. Okay, so basically you will learn how to check user permissions, learn how to check device settings, how to add broadcast receivers, how to add the geofence, of course, how to handle geofence transitions, and then how to mock locations in the emulator. Okay, because your emulator is just a virtual device. So how can you use your virtual device to actually test this? That's what I was saying, mock locations. How do you mock locations in the emulator so it can behave, in a way that is similar to your real device? Okay, so that is actually that. So we're going to get straight into into that. So basically, we're actually going to be building an application, not like a game application, just like a hunting. So it just takes you to three destinations, and then when you get to the last destination, okay, it notifies you that you have actually won. So it's more like a treasure hunt stuff. Okay, so let's get right into it. Let's get right into it. So I've actually set up I've set up a code already. It's of course it's already on GitHub. So this is going to be like a starter code for you. Okay, of course, having to set up this whole thing during class is going to take a lot of time. Okay, but this is just that. So I'm going to walk you through what we have here. Just walk you through what we have here. So first of all, okay, in our main activity, this is actually the class we'll be working on. Okay, so there are some comments there that will actually help. Okay, and it just contains the skeletal code for functions that handle permissions. Okay, and for adding and removing a geofence. So you have your on start, on activity results, new intent to request permission. So this data are just empty for now. Okay, we'll get to actually use them. We'll get to, so this is just the skeletal stuff. Then we have the view model, the Geofence view model. Okay, so this view model is associated with the main activity. Okay, and it handles the Geofence index, like the live data, and it determines what hints should be shown on the screen. Okay, we'll get to see that when we actually build, when we move on and build the application. So I'll explain that more. And then, of course, we have the utils, the notification utils, which, so when you enter a particular Geofence, okay, a notification pops up. So basically, that's what this class actually does. It creates styles. It just creates and styles your notification. Okay, that's basically what the notification utils actually what does. And then, of course, the broadcast receiver. Okay, so this just contains, of course, just the onReceive method. Okay, it's just the skeletal code for your onReceive method of the broadcast receiver. So we'll update this the onReceive method while we move on. And then finally, our activity main. Okay, so this is just what we have now. So yeah, so that's actually that. Okay, so we'll get right into it. Yeah, so just a moment. Sorry about that. Let me set this up. Okay. Okay. Okay, so yeah, I think we can. Yeah, I think this is fine. Okay, so yeah, I got this project. So this it's a game project actually. So we'll just use this to learn more about geofencing. So let's move on. So the first thing we're going to do, of course, is to request permissions. Okay, so request permissions because you need to get location permission from a user. Okay, so basically we'll just do that in our manifest. I believe you know how to do that already. So let's just do that quickly. And so user uses permission, and then so we're going to use the location, define location, and then I'll sort that out, and then uses permission, and then we're going to access the background location. Okay, so yeah, background location. Okay, so let's see what we have here. Okay, so if you need to access here, you must request both. That's okay. So we'll actually fix this. We must request for it if we're actually going to use it. So we're going to fix that. Okay, so the Geofencing API requires that the location be shared at all times. Okay, it requires that the location be shared at all times. So if you're using Android version Q, think about API 29 or later, okay, we actually need to specifically ask the user for this permission. Okay, that's why you have that error there. You need to specifically ask the user for permission. Okay, so how do we do that? So I'll go to our main activity. Okay, go to our main activity, and then I'm going to create a variable. Okay, I'm going to create a variable. Okay, let me just create that here. Okay, let's just create that here. Okay, so I'm going to call it. So this is going to, so we basically want to check if the device is running on API 29 and above, that's Android Q. So okay, so we're going to get that. So we're just going to say Android. Okay, .os.build version XDK version SDK int. Okay, so we're going to check if that is greater than, if the device, okay, is greater than or equal to that of Android Q. So we're going to say android.os.build.version codes.q. Okay, so we'll check if the particular device is actually running, if it's actually greater than or it's equal to, you know, the Android Q, which is the API 29, or the much more recent one. So we need to make that check. So once we do that, then we'll now have to create a method to check for these permissions. Okay, to check for the permissions. Now, let's see. So right down here, so we have a function foreground background location permission approved. Okay, so we're actually going to do something here now. So we're going to say, so this is where we're going to check for that permission. Okay, so let me just do that. I'll explain it more. So I'm going to say, I'll create a variable. I'm going to call it foreground. Okay, let's just add the location. Foreground location approved. Okay, so let's get that it has been approved. Let's get that. So call a package manager, package manager dot permission granted. Okay, check if it's equal to the, so let's use activity compact. So the check self permission, of course, I have to pass context, and then okay, so I think that's the wrong permission. So but we need to pass in the permission. So I'm going to choose the android.manifest here. Sorry. Permission, yeah, the access my location. Okay, so that's the permission that I want to check, and then close that out. So to avoid this from being too long, so let's just stick this down here. Okay, so we're going to do this. Yeah, so that's fine. Okay, yeah. So then that's for the foreground. Then for the background, permission approved. Want to check if the back, because remember we said that it requires that location be shared at all times. So I think I need to, okay, I have an error here. Okay, so let's check for the background permission if it's been approved. So I'll say, so how do we do that? I'll say if So if it's using Android, that's what just getting the version now, because the running queue or later variable, it actually gets the version, it checks, okay? Checks if this if the particular device is greater than the API 29. So if it is greater, so if this is true, okay, if it is true, then let me just packet manager permission granted. Okay, so I'm just going to copy this to avoid. So, but here, so this will be for the background, access background location. Okay, so if it is true, then we get the permission, else, okay, also just passing true. Okay, so I'm going to, then what are we going to return? We're basically going to return the foreground and, okay, sorry, I need to find my hand. Okay, and background. Okay, so let's now talk about this again. Let me run through it a bit now. So what we are basically doing is this. First of all, we must actually check if the access find location is actually what's granted. We have to check if it has been granted, which is what we are doing. That's why we have the foreground location approved, and then we are storing the value, because this is going to return a true or a false, because we are checking for equality if it is granted. So we're going to return, we're checking for this value if it's actually going to be true or it is actually false. Now, but basically we want to check if it has what's been granted now. But if the device is running Android Q, which is the API 29 or higher, then we have to check that the background location, the access background location permission has also been granted. So we're going to return true, okay, if the device is running a lower version. Okay, if it is running a lower version, we'll return what? True. But where you don't need a permission to, of course, if it is actually a lower version, we don't actually need permission. Okay, so we're returning true if the device is running a version lower than Q, where we don't actually need permission. But for the ones a bit higher, we actually have to check. Okay, that's why we are just putting this check here, just in case our version is higher than Android Q. Okay, so that's actually that. So we're returning true if the permission has been granted, and false, of course, if not. Okay, that's basically what this is going to do. So because, of course, true and true is going to be false. It's true, rather. True and false is false, and the likes. Okay, now the next thing, let's request permissions now. Okay, we're going to request permissions. So let's do this. So let's do this now. So in our request foreground and background location permission, so let's now request permissions now. So we're going to do that here. So let's request permission. So now, so we're going to request the access fine, and then on the Android Q and above. Okay, that's Android 10 plus. So I'm just going to copy okay, so let's just do that. So I'm going to say if the foreground okay, so if the foreground and background location permission are approved, okay, so we're getting this method now. So whatever the value of this method is, okay, but if it is true, so we're just going to say, so return, and then I'm going to do something. So set permissions, it's an array, and then so it's going to be an array of okay, so our manifest. Okay. Okay, so and then let's get the result code. So our result code would be when running or later, okay, when running or later, we're going to have so our permissions array now. We're going to add to it. We're going to add the background location permission to it. Okay, I think this is the Android manifest, and then dot permission. Okay, so dot permission dot background location. Okay, so and then okay, so let's do something. Okay, so I think I'll need to create something here. Okay, all right, let's move. Spell that well. I'll work on this. I'll give you fix that error. So okay, so request foreground and background. Okay, let's do that, both of them. Permission. Let's say result code. Okay, so else let's just else let's just have this. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to we'll sort this out now. But before that, let me break this down for you so we understand what. So if the permissions, okay, has already been granted, of course we do not need to ask again. Okay, we don't need to ask again, so we can just return out of the method. But basically, what we want to do now, let me just do this. So we are saying if the foreground and background location permission approved. So if it is approved, whatever that value is, if it has been approved, of course, that means we'll get a true. Okay. Just return. Okay. Just return out of the method. If it's approved, there's no need. Just move on. Okay. Now, but so this permissions array, it actually just contains the permissions to be requested. Initially, we added the access find location to that array, since that is, of course, this one is needed by all the API levels. Okay, all the API levels need this particular one. Okay, but not all of them requires the background location. Okay, none of them require. So we don't actually, we have to now add that to it. So that's why we have now. The next thing is we actually now we need a result code. Now, this code is different if the code is different if the device is running on Android Q, that is API 29 or later. Okay, it's actually different, and it actually determines whether you need to check for one permission, which is the find location, or multiple permissions, which is the find and the background location when your user returns from the permission request screen. That means probably when the user does not actually accept, give access for you to to location. Okay, so we're now adding a when statement to check the version that is actually running, and then assign the result code. Okay, and then assign result code to our request foreground and background permission result word code. So if the device is running Q, that is a P29 or later, and we'll now also request foreground. And so what I'm going to do, this will now be, so if not, we're going to request foreground only. So let me, okay. Yeah, so yeah, we're going to request the foreground word only. Yeah, so request the foreground word only. Okay, so that's that. So let me take that again. So when you remember, when you're using Android Q, okay, and above, you have to request for the background location. Okay, for the ones lower, you don't actually have to, but you have to request that permission for Android API 21 and above. Okay, so we actually need a result code, and like I said, it's actually different if the device is running 29 or later. And this code, it determines whether you need to check for one permission, which is the fine, or multiple one, which is the fine, and then the background location, especially when the user returns from the permission request screen. Probably from that permission request screen, he didn't actually give permission, okay? He just leaves that screen and comes back. So you need to know which permission to check for. Are we checking for one, or we're checking for two of them? Now, that takes us to adding the when statement to check the version that is actually what's running. So for it to request for that location again, we now need to check the version. So if the version, and that version, of course, we're going to assign it to the result code. So if the version is, if you're running API 29, yes, or later, okay, we'll now get the result code, which is request foreground and background. Okay, but if not, we just get the foreground only. That's if you're using for the lower one. Okay, then finally, don't worry, I'm going to fix this. Then finally, we now need to request permissions passing in the current activity, the permissions array, and the result code. So I'm just going to add this. Well, let's do this now. Okay. So this closes out the when, and then this closes the if. Okay, so okay, so I think yeah, so yeah, we're good to go. So we're going to say activity compact does request permissions. Okay, so of course pass a context. So I can just say this at main, or yeah, this is fine. And then it needs the permission was array. So I'm now going to get my permissions array. Okay, so okay, I think yes, so I think we have so this is out of scope. So let's see. Okay, so I need to check this. The scoping here is a bit wrong. So let's see. So this is a full scope. So we're saying if this, then return. Okay, so okay, so yeah, I think I know why. So there's no need for us to, yeah. Okay. Yeah, that actually that works that out. So if this is true, just return. Okay, but if it's not, then it will keep on, it will come down to run this code. Okay. Okay, so and then this has to be a var. So okay, yeah. So yeah, I think we're fine now. Okay, so now passing the permissions array, and then passing the result code. Okay. Okay, so yeah, that's fine. So that's actually yeah. So we need to handle these permissions actually. Okay, we need to actually handle these permissions. So let's see, we need to handle these permissions. So how do we do that? How do we do that? How do we handle these permissions? Okay, so let's get right into that. Okay. Okay, so I want to create a result code for this, guys. Okay, so let me just come down here. So let's create a const about, okay, so for this, let's create a request code. I could just, let's call this 33, and then for the only permission, okay, and that'll be 34. Okay, yeah. So let's move on. So let's handle the permissions now. Okay, let's handle permissions. So first of all, what we need to do, permissions can be denied in a few ways. Okay, it can be denied if your grant results array is empty. Okay, so let me just run this code for you. Let's just do it, and then I'm going to explain it one after the other. So on requests, where are you? Okay, so on request permission results. So if permissions can be denied, like I said, if the grant results array is empty, then the interaction was interrupted. Okay, so if the grant results array is empty, then the interaction was interrupted and the permission request was cancelled. Okay, now another way it can be denied is, now if the grant results array's value at the location permission index has a permission denied, it means that the user denied the foreground permissions. And then if the request code equals our request foreground and background permission result code that we created. Okay, if it equals that, and also the background location permission index is denied, that means the device is actually running API 29 or above, and that background permission was actually denied. So let me just actually let's actually do this in code. Let's do this in code so we actually get that. I'll add a log statement later. Let's just put this in code. So what are we going to do? First of all, we need to check if our grant results array is empty. So if the grant results array, if it is empty, or because we want to capture those three conditions, if it is empty, or if the grant results arrays, if the value of that grant results array, okay, if the value at the location permission index has a permission denied, that means the user actually denied it. So if grant results, okay, location permission index. Now I'll create these const values, okay. Okay, if this equal to our package manager. I wonder why I like to call this in package manager. Okay. Dot permission denied. Okay. That's the second condition. Or if the request code, so let's say, if our request code, okay, equals, let me just pick this up. If it equals our foreground and background permission result code, okay. If our request code equals this, and our grant results location permission index. But now for background, okay, this one will now be for background. So let me use background. Okay. Okay, so Let me move this thing. Okay, good. So if that is equal to our package manager dot permission denied. Okay, so let's create this. Let me start with the location permission index. Okay, location permission index. Okay. So let's give it a value of 0. And then the background location permission index, let's give it a value. Okay. Duplicate this. Let's give it a value of 1. Okay, so this is our condition. Okay. So this is our condition. So if the grant result is empty, or the grant results, the value of the grant results, okay, at location permission index, okay, which is 0 at that position, okay, if it has a permission denied, it actually means that the permission, the foreground permission has been denied, okay. And then if our request code equals to the, if our request code equals to the request foreground and background permission result code, and at the same time is also equal to this and the background location permission index. Okay, if both of them, if our result code equals to these two, and at the same time is equal to the package manager.permission denied. So if this also is true, okay, it now means that our permission actually has been denied. So remember I said permissions can actually be denied in a few ways, and these are the few ways. Okay, so what do we do? We're going to actually now call, we're going to use a snack bar. Okay, so okay, so if grant result is, I don't think this should not be here. Okay, good. So if that's, then I'm going to open a curly brace now. So we're going to use our snack bar. So snack bar dot make, and then let's get okay, dots. So what's our activity maps mean here? Okay, that's just this layout. Okay, that's like the parents. Okay, so that so pass in that, and then for snack bar, I'm going to pass in so we have a permission denied explanation. Okay, so on the strings file, you need to grant location in order for you to play this game. And then of course we have to choose the duration. So I'm going to say snack bar dot so let's give it an indefinite length. Okay, so after that, then I'll call the dot set action, and for the set action I'm going to pass in a string. Okay, so you can check out the settings, just settings. Okay, now we'll start activity. So just do intent. Okay, let's just apply so we can. So our action is going to be settings dot action. Okay, so I think I need to import the right settings. Like no, definitely not. Definitely not this setting. So you need to be very careful when you're. Oh, I didn't even see the equalizer. So settings. So I'm going to use the provider. Let's get this. Okay, so let me see. I'm looking for, yeah, application detail settings. Okay. And then we're going to pass in data. Okay, and the data we're passing, I'm going to use the URI.parse, pass in the package, and then our application, the application ID. So you can, and then you pass in. Okay. Let's see. I think we. Okay. Well, so I'm supposed to use from parts. Yeah. Yeah. So you give it the scheme, the package, and then the build config. From the build config, okay, you get your application ID, and then of course the fragment is actually null. And then for the flags, well, the flags are going to raise. It's just going to be the. So I'm going to say intent dot. Let's flag a new task. Okay, so and then can call the dot show. So that's for the if statement. So well, else if all this, I'm going to call our check device location settings and geofence. Okay, because so basically we need to check the settings to be sure that location is actually being turned on. Okay, that's basically what that is. Okay, so when you click the action there on the snack bar, where you click on it, okay, it should take you to your settings, so you can actually do what, set your location. Okay, that's basically that. Of course, for the check this, we already have this. We're going to implement all that. Okay, so let's just run the app now and then see. And then let's see what we have. Let's see how far we've gone. So I want to be sure that we've actually been able to get the pop-up that will prompt you to grant permissions. Okay. And then let's see that. Let's look at that quickly. Okay, so yeah, we have okay. I think we so granted, and then this. Okay. So there should just be one. Okay, yeah, that's fine. My bad. Okay, so I hope that should be that. Okay, so yeah, we install and we start. So that's a good sign. That's a good sign. Okay, so application has launched. So, okay, so you can see you need to grant location permission in order to play this game. So we now created an action from our snack bar. You can actually see that here. Okay, so the settings, which is this text here. So what happens when I click on it, it should take me to the settings for the page of that particular application. Okay, so now you need to set what permission. Now for here, there's no permissions that's been allowed. Okay, so so this is an emulator actually. So you just have to, so you now have to click on allow all the time. Okay, so you either choose allow all the time or allow, yeah, choose allow all the time or just allow. If you're running on API lower than 29, it should just be allow. But if you're running on the ones high, you have to choose allow all the time. So see what happens. Assuming I choose on allow only, let's say allow only while using the app, and then go back. Okay, so this is the permission that's been missing. So go back. Okay, so I'm going to just close this and then open it again. Sorry. Right. So you see, it still takes me there to show that there's something that still needs to be done. So let me, close up everything and then let's run it again. Yeah, so but let me click allow all the time. Okay, so settings. Yeah, so there's a permission now. Okay. And that permission is allowed all the time. So we are actually good. So you can see it actually now allows us to use the application and get to do what we want to do. Okay. So let's just move on. So the next thing, let's see how can we actually check, okay? How can we check the device location? Okay, because right now the code is actually, the app now asks the user to give permissions, but another thing is if the device location is turned off, then of course your permission is not going to mean anything. So now we need to check if the device location is actually on. Okay, and basically we'll just actually add the codes to check that, to actually check that a user has their device location enabled, and if not, we'll display an activity where they can turn it on using location request. So that's where we have our check device location settings and start the Geofence app. Okay, so I'm going to, so here, this is where we're going to do that. Okay, so it may feel like we're going to write a lot of code, but yeah, let's just do that. And then I'll do my best to explain them one by one. So let me just do that quickly. So I have the location request. I'm going to create a variable. Location request. And basically I want to get, so from my location request class, okay. So call that .grade, and then I'm just going to call, I'm going to call the apply method on it. And then I'm going to get, so the priority, I want to get the priority. So location request dot priority, let's see, priority low power. Okay, so first of all, we're just creating a location request, okay, because we're going to use it to actually, we're going to use this request, you know, in setting up what we need to set up, okay. And then we're now going to get so we're going to use it in our builder right now, and then I'm going to create a val. I'm going to use this builder, and then I'm going to get the location settings request, okay, dot builder. Okay, and then I'm going to now call method dot add what location request. So I'm going to add location request, and it's the location request that we created. Okay. So that's actually that. We're using location, so we can basically just use it for the location settings request. So that will take them to the location setting. Okay. Now, if the next thing we're going to use, we're going to use location services, okay, to get the settings client. Now, how are we going to do that? Basically, we're just going to create a variable. We're going to call it settings client, settings on our app. So I'm going to use location services dot get settings client, okay, dot get settings what client, and then I'm just going to pass the context. Okay, I think I spelled settings wrongly. Now, and then I'm now going to have, so I'm going to create a variable. Let me call it location setting response. Okay. Now, I just want to get the response. So I'll say the settings client dot check location settings. That's all. And then it needs the location settings request, which is in my builder, which is the variable I created, builder. Okay, and of course I have to now call dot build to build that. Okay, now, so now what we're actually most interested in is finding out if the location settings are not satisfied. Okay, so we're going to now have to add a listener, okay, and on failure listener to our location settings response. Okay, we're going to add a listener to that. So I'm just going to say location settings response dot add on failure listener. Okay, so let's use the lambda and then, yeah. So so we're going to check if the exception, because of course you can see the it here. So an exception. So we'll check if the exception is of type resolvable API exception. And if it is that, we'll now try calling the start resolution for result method. Actually, that method is just to prompt the user to turn on device location. That's just what that method is. Okay, so I'm going to say if it's okay is resolvable API exception, okay, and resolve, okay. So this our resolve here is what from our check device location, okay. So we also need to get this value if it is true or false. So if it is that, and then so we're going to do a try. So I'll say it dot start resolution for results, okay, and that takes the context which I'm going to pass this, and then it takes a request code. So I'm going to create a request code for this. I'm going to call it request turn on, let's say turn device location on, yeah. Okay, so yeah, then I'll close this bracket. Okay, so let's create a value for that, and then this is going to be what do we give it? What do we give it? Let's give it a 0. Oh no, let's give it a number. Let's give it a number. Can say 28, or let's just use 29. Okay, so yeah, that's that. And then of course, when we do a try, we definitely have to do a catch. So what are we going to catch? So let's send exception. So we're going to use the intent sender dot send intent exception, and then let's just add a log here. Let's add a log to sure. I'm going to create. Okay. Resolution. Okay. Okay, let's just, or should we just yeah, okay, that's all right. That's all right. So for our tag, okay, let's just okay, our tag should just be main activity. Okay, yeah, that's fine. That's fine as our tag. So yeah, we're not done. We're making progress. So so if the exception now, okay, because we are checking if it is of resolvable API exception, okay, and the resolve, that's if this is true. So we're looking at true and the like. So if the exception is not of type resolvable API exception, so we'll now present a snack bar that alerts the user that location needs to be enabled to play the game. Okay, so I'm just going to add an else here. And then So, well, I've actually created a snack bar already. So permits me to, be a bit lazy. Okay, so I'll just edit stuff. So yeah, this is fine. So instead of so the string we're going to use, so I have a location required. I have an error message. Okay, this is just what location services must be enabled. Okay, so I have that, and our snack bar length, well, let it stay at infinite, and then we have a set action. Okay, so here, sort of settings, say okay, we have let's see, let me create a resource value for that. Okay, so now we are not actually starting an activity. Okay, so all we're going to just call is the check device location. Yeah. So if the exception is not of type resolvable API, so we're calling back that check device location again, which of course, when we did, yeah, so we're just going to call the method back. Okay. So now if our location settings response, if it actually completes, okay, if it actually was complete, so we need to check that it is successful and then add a perimeter, that is a geofence now, okay, for a clue. Okay, since we're actually doing a game, we need to, if it is complete, okay, if it actually completes, so we need to check that it is successful. So we did an on failure. So now we'll do a load the location settings response dot add on complete listener. Okay, so if it dot is successful, okay, let's call the method add geofence for a clue. So I want to add a perimeter now, a geofence for a clue. Of course, we have this method here, but we're going to now, build upon it. Okay, so this method is just going to add a geofence for the current clue if needed. So that's just that. So let's move on. So finally now, okay, in our on activity results, where is this? So we need to okay, good, right here. So after the user chooses whether to accept or deny the device location permissions, okay, here we're going to check if the user has chosen to accept it. In our on activity results, we'll check if he has accepted it. If not, we'll ask again. That's basically what we're going to do here. So I'm just going to say if request code, okay, is the same as the request code for the turn device location on. So if this is true, if this is the same, what are we going to do? We'll check the device listen and then we'll pass in false. That's just that. Okay. So let's test this out. Let's test this out that this works. Let's test this out. And then while that is loading, while that's building, so the next thing we're going to do is to now add a perimeter. How do we add a geofence right now? Okay, how do we add that? Because we're actually done with everything that has to do with the permissions being granted. Okay, so let's now add a geofence. So first thing we'll do, well, this is okay. So let's see. So location services must be enabled. I'll click OK. So let's now check. So okay, so let me just go here. So location. So it tells us that location service must be enabled. So it will keep on prompting you till you actually enable it. Okay, that's just what I do. So we're checking and it's passing what false. So remember what we said. Okay, so it checks if the user has chosen to accept. If not, it will ask again. So if you accept, this would actually go out. So I need to, emulator can be very interesting. So location. So let me turn this off. And then let's open this again. So I've turned off device location. So, okay, so that's actually that. Let's move on to adding a geofence. Now, in adding a geofence, okay, we need to, first of all, we need a way to handle transitions. Okay, we need a way to handle transitions. What are these transitions? Geofence transitions, that's from one perimeter to another. Okay, we talked about the transitions, the enter, dwell, and the exit. Okay, so we're going to use a pending intent to do that. A pending intent is just the description of an intent and a target action to perform with it. So we'll create that pending intent for a broadcast receiver, because that's what will handle the geofence location. So now a broadcast receiver is just how your Android applications can send or receive broadcast messages from the Android system and other Android applications. Okay, so but I'll talk about that in more details as we move on. Okay, so back to our main activity. So let's just do something. Let's add a private variable here. So I'm going to say let's create a geofence, a pending intent. Okay. Yeah, pending intent. Let me use by lazy. Okay. And then we're going to create a var intent. Okay, so let's create the intent now, which is the action. And then we'll pass this, which is the context. And then we're going to use the Geofence broadcast receiver. Pass. Okay. So let me just finish that. Okay. And then so with our intent dot action, so okay, so we have our action geofence events. Okay, so it's a companion object that we created. Okay, so that's actually that. And then the last thing here, now say pending intent dot, so now gets the broadcast, and in getting the broadcast, we just pass in the context. Okay, it needs a request code, so we're going to just pass in 0. And then needs the intent, passing the intent that we created. And then, of course, for the flags, we can get a flag from the pending intent dot flag. Let's update current. Okay. So, excuse me. Okay, so for the lazy, I know you may be asking, well, we can read that actually. Lazy properties are just values that get computed, only on first access. You can actually just read the company documentation. Maybe I'll just drop that on Slack for you guys. So now let's add a geofencing client. Because now a geofencing client is the main entry points for interacting with the geofencing APIs. Okay, so I'm going to do that in the onCreate. First of all, let me instantiate our geofencing client. Okay, we just created a late init variable, so we're just going to initialize it now. And so of course we get that from the location services dot get geofencing clients, and then you pass in the context. So then we're going to add geofences now. So this is how we're going to add geofences. So we have a method for adding that. So let's use that method that we created. Okay. So this is how you add a geofence. Okay. So we have actually created stuff from our view model. Okay. So let me just walk us through. So we have our geofence view model. Okay. So where we get, we have an index. So we have an index, geofence index key and the likes, the live data. So we're using live data. So we have the hints. So we'll just do a transformation for that. And so basically is this with respect to the game. Okay, so when you actually get into, once it gets your location, okay, it actually now shows you where you are. Okay, it actually gives you that notification and the likes. So, but let me just show you guys here. Let me create this. Let's run this code. You understand it as I move on. So I'm going to just, so if first of all, I want to check if the geofence is what active. I want to check if there are any active perimeters. So I'll use geofence and perimeter interchangeably. I want to first of all check if there's any active perimeter or geofence for for the game, okay, for our treasure hunt. If we already have, then there's no need to add another, since you actually just want them to be looking for one treasure at a time. So if this is true, okay, we'll just return, that's all. So this is our get geofence to function to check if it is what's active. So we'll just get the index, okay, which if the geofence index, the value of it and the hint is the same, okay, because we'll actually there has to be an index and there has to be a hint index. So the perimeter that is, let's say, for example, Lagos, or let's use mainland, okay, and then there's a hint value also. So if those two are the same, it means that there is actually a geofence, okay. And then let's go back. So we'll just return from that. Then next, we're going to find the current perimeter index from our view model, and we'll now remove any existing one. So how do we do that? I'm just going to current geofence index. So this is, so I'm going to call the view model dot next one. So we want to get the next perimeter, that is the next place that you're in now, okay. And then, but we need to check, because we need to remove any existing one, okay. So I'm going to say if the current geofence index, okay, is greater than or is equal to the geofence, just geofencing constants dot num landmark. So let me take Q right there. Okay, so we have somewhat landmarks that we create. So this landmark data, okay, so it's just, so this is actually it. So this is just an array of places where that is our own perimeters now, okay, spots, you can call it spots, okay, you can call it areas, perimeters. So let's say a particular eatery in Lagos is where you hid a particular clue, so that becomes a landmark. So we now have to get the latitude and then the longitude. So for every landmark object, we have a landmark data object here, okay, and this data class, this landmark data object, it takes an ID, a hint, the name, and then the latitude and the longitude of that particular landmark. Okay, so for each landmark, so you have this. Now, the reason I'm using something a bit different now, of course, if you're, for those of us who are actually using an emulator, because I'll show you how to play around with an emulator. But of course, if you're going to use your main device, you can actually use locations around you. I think I showed you in last class how you can just get a particular location. You can get just you can actually do that. So, but these are places that I will actually show you using the emulator. So each landmark data object has an ID. Okay, so you can see the ID here for this one, Golden Gate Bridge. It has a hint. So this hint is, kind of what you're giving to the user to help him know, okay, so for this Golden Gate Bridge, the hint now is go to a bridge with a name that does not match the color that it is. So there are several, so these are the geofence hints, the perimeter hints, point hints, places hints. So you can just use those words to replace geofence. You have this, let's say, ferry building hints. Go to a market with an amazing assortment of delicious foods. It's in San Francisco. It's a San Francisco classic. Okay, so these are hints for you. Now, so each landmark data object has an ID. It has a hint. Okay, it has a name. Okay, so what is the name? The name is what at the Golden Data Bridge. Okay, that's the name. And then, of course, the latitude and longitude of that particular position. Okay, so this not the number of landmarks here. So this is just the size. Okay, so let me come back here. So what we're saying is, if the current index, the current geofence index, at the current place you are now, remember it's this in an array. So if the particular index is greater than the size, okay, if it's greater than or equal to the size, we're going to what's called the remove geofences method. Okay, basically we'll implement this actually, how we're going to remove a geofence. So we'll call that, and then where else? Where were we? Okay, I think I just skipped where we are. Where's our add geofence? Where are you? Okay, here. Good. So after removing it, then I'm going to call my view model.geofence activated. Okay. So what does this actually do? This just activates that particular geofence. Okay. The geofence index dot value. Okay. So the hint now is assigned to the geofence index. Okay. Now the value, of course, we're using a live data to set the values and the like. So of course, you know the whole concept of live data. So this just gets the current state and the like. Okay, so let's move on. And then of course, let's just, so we're going to return. So if it's this, remove the geofence, activates that geofence, and then you can then return. So once you actually have the index of the geofence and you know it is valid, we can now get the data surrounding that particular geofence, which could include the ID, the latitude, the longitude or coordinates. Okay, so I'm going to move on and do something. So I'm going to get that. So from as current geofence data. Hope we can round this up before we can, then we'll finish up in next class. Okay, so we can now get the we can get the ID, the latitude, and like. So I'm just going to say geofencing constants. Okay, dot the landmark data, which is an array of landmarks, and then we get the current geofence index. So we're passing this here. Okay, we're passing this here so that we'll now get the details of that particular landmark, and then we'll use that. We'll use that actually. And then, so the next thing we're going to do now is to now build the geofence using the geofence builder and the information in this our current geofence data. Okay, so we're going to set expiration duration using the constants. So, and then of course the transition type. So what we're going to do, I'm going to say val geofence equals, so we have the geofence.builder. So we'll get that instance. So with that, I can just say, so first of all, let's set the request ID. So the request ID now, of course, is our current geofence in data, no, not index, current geofence data, which is the landmark object. Good. dot ID. We can access the ID. And then we'll set a circular region. Okay. And how do we do? So we use the current the object dot the lat long, okay, dot latitude. Okay, and then get the longitude also dot lat long dot longitude. Okay, and then we have to pass in one more thing for this circular region, and that's going to be the geofencing constant. From there, we're going to get the radius in meters. Okay, so this is just 100F that we just defined. Okay, and then yeah, so what next for the geofence? Okay, we need to set expiration duration. Okay, and we have one already in our constants. So, and then we need to set the transition type. Yeah. So for the transition type, let's see. Yeah, so this is going to be transition enter. And then finally, we can now call the build method. Okay. So this is how, that's actually that. So, and then, so the next thing we'll now do is to build the geofence request. Okay, we need to build the what request, and we'll do that by setting what we'll call an initial trigger. Okay, so what do I mean? Let's do this. Geofencing request. So we have a geofencing request class here. We're gonna call dot builder. So get that object, and then with that, we set initial trigger, and the initial trigger we're going to use our geofencing requests dot initial trigger enter. This comes with that, and then we'll now add the geofence, which is the one we just created. Add our geofence, and then of course we then build it. So that's how you build your geofence request. Then of course we now have to call. Of course, we have to call remove geofences on our geofencing client. I'm going to show you that to remove any geofence that has already been associated with that pending index. So if you've passed one place already, okay, once you go to the next one, we have to take that one out. So I'm going to call, so using let's do something now. So geofencing request. Okay, our geofencing client. Okay. So dot remove geofence. So we need to pass in a pending intent. Okay. Of course, we have geofencing pending intents that we created. Okay, the private variable that we created. Okay, so let's use the run, and then let's do this. So I'm going to add an incomplete listener here. I'm going to add an incomplete listener. And then let's say our geofencing client, let's use our objects, and to add the geofence. And to add the geofence, you need to pass in the request. You need to also pass in the intent. Okay, that's actually that. Okay, but at the same time, we now need to also do this, and then add on success listener. So let's just do a toast here. Okay, let's do a toast, this, and then so we have I think we have a string here. Geofence added. So let's see. Yeah. So, and then we need to check. We need to check if it dot message, let's see. Okay, so okay, let's see. Okay, I think okay, let's not do that yet. Let's do that for the on failure. Okay, let's just do that for the on failure. So let's just put a toast. Then we'll just call Geofence activated. Yeah. So, but when we actually for the on failure, let me just copy this toast. So we're going to make it two. So this is Geofence not added. That's if that Geofence has not been added, and then yeah. So if our exception, yeah, if it's not equal to null, then what do we do? Let's just log that. So already have our tag now, right? And then pass in the message. So yeah, so that's actually that. That's actually that. So basically what we are just doing here, okay? Basically what we're doing here. So this is to build, let's see. So we need to do a permission check. Let's see. Well, I wouldn't really, let's just leave this first. Okay. Okay. So now if we are building the geofence request, okay. Now at this point, let me just see if I can explain a bit. So what we basically just did here. So we are calling the remove geofence method on our geofencing client. So we can remove any geofences already associated with the pending intent. So when this remove geofence is complete, whether it is successful or it's actually failed, we're going to add the new geofence. Okay. So you can disregard the success and failure of the removal of geofence because even if the removal fails, it will not affect you adding another another geofence. Okay, but it's still fine. Still fine. Now okay. So that's actually that. Then if the adding of geofences is successful, we just need to actually let the user know. That's why we're just displaying a toast. Okay. So that's actually why we have this here. So if the adding of geofence was successful, just give a toast that the geofence has been added. And of course, if it fails, we'll now give the person a different toast, but also let the user know that there was an issue with adding that particular geofence. Okay, so I know this is an emulator, so but I'll show you. Let's now see how we should do it. So let's apply that and then we install and restart the application. Should be rounding up soon. And then we'll complete this the next class. Well, let's see. So okay, so let me turn on my location. Okay. So let's be location turned on. Let me see the two apps. Okay, Geofencing has okay. So okay, so I hope. Okay, so let's see. I think this is one of the perks of using using an emulator. Okay, so but we're actually out of time. There's another class that needs to hold right away. Okay, there's another class that needs to hold right away. So In our next class, we're actually going to round this up by updating the broadcast receiver, and then I'll show you how to mock the location using the emulator, and also how to remove geofences. And then, of course, how do we now finish the game? How do we navigate to the last screen, that's the winning location? So in our next class, we're going to actually, complete this. Okay, but for now, we actually have to round up. So I'm going to push this code to GitHub, and then of course I'll drop the link for you all on the Slack channel, so you can just pick it up, okay, and then go through it before the next class. And then if you have any questions regarding it, okay, just to drop it on the Slack channel, and then I'll do well to respond as quickly as possible. Okay, but for tonight, I think this is where we'll draw the curtain. But if you have any question, I think I should be able to answer one or two before we round up. If you have any question, I'm all ears, I'm all ears, I'm all ears. Okay, so in the absence of no question, in the absence of no questions, I think we'll just call this, a night. Yes, we'll call this a night. So guys, thank you very much for attending, and then I'll see you in our next class. Yes. Okay. I'll push that I'll push that separately. Okay. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.